With no further ado, I'd like to introduce Grifter and Pope with their talk, Modern Day SOC Evolution, From Open Source to Unlimited Budget.
All right. Let's see. Is this gonna work? I think I'm gonna have to shout into this, but it's fine. Go ahead. All right. Yeah, it's okay. Stay with us. Or don't get the hell out. No, that's exactly the kind of energy we want for this talk, so bring it, bring it. So 23 years ago, Jeff Moss, also known as the Dark Tangent, reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in running the network at Black Hat? We need somebody to come and make sure that it works for at least half the time, because that's what we're used to, right? Usually the network was down for half or the majority of the conference. He was like, you can bring a team, we'll pay you, we'll fly you out, pay for your hotel, all that. And I was like, that sounds great. So I brought 2 of my friends, and we got some off-the-shelf equipment, which was a Cisco 2600 router, some of the old Cisco access points that had the Orinoco gold cards you would slot into them, and you'd tape the antennas up on the wall, and then some Netgear switches, right? But what was great about it was that the network only went down for about 15 minutes throughout that entire show, right? So that hadn't been done before. And that 15 minutes, I was walking around talking to the trainers. We'd check in on them because there were only 15 classes at the time, so we could do that. Walked in, poked my head in, and someone said, oh, did the network go down earlier? I said, yeah, it did. I'm really sorry about that. And the trainer said, yeah, I have a 0-day for those access points, and I demoed it for the class. And I was like, and so that was Greg Hoagland, if you know Greg. I was like, thanks, buddy, I appreciate that. And so that's how we rolled. There were about 1,500 attendees at the time, like I said, 15 classes, but things have changed. So this is what we have grown into today. So the SOC has evolved, right? That's it, end of talk. No. So the SOC has evolved. This year we had roughly 25,000 attendees and 96 classes. And that means that we needed more equipment, and different ways of doing things. What that meant was we started out with a couple of off-the-shelf things, some open source projects, scripts, open source hardware, running PF on Socris boxes and throwing them out in classrooms, to realizing that that didn't scale. And it didn't scale to the point that we said we should probably talk to vendors. And then Bart Stump and I, who is my right-hand man, no offense, man, I get that you're, it's all right, I love you, Pope. But oh yeah, what a terrible time to find out. But yeah, so Bart and I decided, like, hey, this doesn't scale. Maybe we need some enterprise solutions in here. What if we go down to the expo floor and we ask the vendors if we can use their stuff, and we'll put their logo in the program or whatever, and we said, let's give it a shot. We went down, spoke to the first vendor, said, hi, we're the guys who run the NOC. Would it be okay if we did this thing with it? And they were like, yes. Like, when? Now? Do you need stuff now? We could get stuff sent. Do you need people too? And we were like, oh, this is nice. And we're like, and so we're like, so I like looked at Bart and I was like, let's go shopping, right? And that's what we did, is we wandered around the expo floor. We started getting demos from people. We knew kind of the things that we wanted, and we went and sought those vendors out, had conversations with them, and we've been very, very lucky in the fact that because of the brand that Black Hat is and because of what we're doing, everybody has said yes. And so we've grown into this, over 60 people in the Black Hat NOC. We do call it a NOC. I know the talk says SOC, but that's because we replace every router, every switch, every firewall, and every access point at all of the venues that we go to around the world. So Singapore, London, and in Las Vegas, it is our equipment. We do that so we can mitigate things as they're happening, but that's the reality of it now. Multiple vendors, millions of dollars of equipment, pallets of gear, months of preparation so that we can stand up an enterprise class network in about 2.5 days. So, oh, who are we now that we talked about that? Put your hand up. Now what? What's up?
I just want to comment that I like the story before the introduction.
All right. He likes the story before the introduction. All right. Great. So who are we? All right. So by day I do have a day job. So my name is Neil Weiler. That's the name my mother gave me, but all of you call me Grifter. I am the VP of Defensive Services for Coalfire. I have been leading the Black Hat NOC for 22 and a half years. I am a DEF CON department head. I run all contests and events at DEF CON. Been doing that for 23 years. Led the SOC at RSA for the last 6 years. Black Hat and DEF CON review boards. I am a nerd. There, that's it. I'm a nerd. Pope.
My name is Pope.
It's Pope!
I'm a director of technical marketing engineering at Corelight. That's what I do for my job. I'm the SOC lead for the Black Hat NOC. I help do a lot of community things. ShmooCon, right here. It's a conference out of Utah, about 2,000 people. So kind of like a ShmooCon, but over on the other side. I help run that. And then B-Sides Salt Lake, B-Sides Cache. I started up a DC 435 group, pulls in 40, 70 people per month. And then I own a company on the side that does web accessibility.
I realized like the people next door can hear us, which is great. So every once in a while we should randomly cheer, like, and see if it. Oh, there you go. Now we'll watch these doors and see if people sneak in from the other talk.
So as we run the Black Hat NOC, we do a lot of tours, right? People come up and we explain what we're doing. It's kind of like a fishbowl if you've ever been there. You can see us all inside. There's a wall that partitions us, but people can come in and see live dashboards, things that are happening there, that's actual network traffic, and other tools that is happening in that environment. And we get asked a lot of questions. And some of these questions are from CISOs. Some of these questions are from countries that there's their cyber department, a lot of universities, and they come up and they say, like, what do we need and what should we buy? And depending on what we say, like, you know, we're probably a VAR's wet dream, right? Like we're like thing, and they're like, well, I don't have money for this, but I do run this, and how can I scale that and integrate this? And so we start answering all these questions, and that led to like, well, we should probably do a talk on this. And I think that was 2018, we decided that. Yeah. We finally made the rough deck in 2021, 2, and then we ignored it until this last year.
Until this morning. Until this morning.
Until right before this prezzo. So the tools that we have defined as what is needed in a SOC is this list right here. So we have EDR. This is endpoint detection and response. This is what sits on your host. We have a SIM or data lake. That's where all your logs are going. So security information and event management. We have an NDR, that's network detection and response. We have a SOAR, security orchestration, automation and response. We have a TIP, which is threat intelligence platform. A sandbox, this is for file detection and malware. This is where files get sent off the wire into it and get detonated. We have UEBA, user and entity behavior analytics, and then identity, verified access to resources. This is who you are and tying it to identity.
So we know that there are other things, and there are probably people shifting in their seat right now saying, ooh, they left this out, they left this out. We get it, okay?
Where's my DLP?
We understand, yeah, we understand
it doesn't
that
work.
You're like, oh, there are other pieces that should be in here as well. We understand that. Well, yeah, nice job, guys. Have you ever done this before? But for us, this is what we feel like we absolutely need. And then, of course, if you couldn't use even all of these things, EDR, SIM, NDR, oh, that's right. We were going to ask them, who pronounces it SIEM? Who says SIEM?
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand if you're wrong.
You're wrong.
You're wrong. You're wrong. Yes. Okay. All right. So, obviously, there are a lot of tools on that previous slide. You have to decide, okay, of these things, now I've decided these are the pieces that make up a solid modern day SOC. What am I going to do here? All of those things translate into time, money, or both. And reality, time is money anyway, so it all comes back to money. But what we mean by how do we decide time, money, or both is you can choose a vendor solution for any one of those tools on the previous slide. You can say, oh, okay, I'm going to go out and buy this thing. Or you can turn around and there is likely a solid open source solution for each one of those as well. If you're a shop that is highly CapEx, right, you've got upfront spend, you can say, all right, we're going to go out and buy this vendor solution. We have a neck to choke. There's support that comes with it. Somebody might even help us stand it up. Fine, spend your money there. But if you have a bunch of bodies, your OpEx, you have the cash to throw at keeping things running, then doing an open source solution might be a better avenue for you, because let's say you're a university, you can throw a bunch of students at it, do a bunch of open source solutions and just throw bodies at it. But if you're not, figure out which ones of these you want to spend your money on, what might be the heaviest lift for the skill set in your environment, and just lean on a vendor to do it, right? And somewhere in between those two things, a mix of both vendor and open source is where we think most folks land, right? We are going to talk about the best-in-class solutions, or what we think they are for each of the tools on the previous slide. We get that there are platforms out there, and believe me, all of the vendors want you to use their platform if they have one, because they want you beholden to them for as long as possible. The problem that we think with that is that if that vendor decides somewhere down the road that they're going to do a 30% increase in the cost for that platform, suddenly the rip and replace becomes really, really painful. And so again, platforms do exist. It means you get a positive in terms of integration, because their tools have been written to work with one another from the start. But try getting rid of that vendor if you want to, and it can be incredibly, incredibly painful.
And take years.
Yeah, take years.
All right, so you might not agree with the list of the things we're going to cover, as he mentioned. You might not agree with the vendors at the top of our list. So we have a poll here that we'll be sharing this afterwards. What we have done is we have obviously our own opinions and expertise, those knock tours, what we're telling people what they should or shouldn't do. And then we started asking a whole lot of our trusted people, especially at the Black Hats and other senior people, of what is the top tool if you could have unlimited budget to buy, and what's the tool if you're doing open source. And sometimes that agreed with what we agreed with, and sometimes it was a different tool that rose to the top of that list. Now, that is not a definitive list across the whole world, or even the United States, or even here in DC. So if you disagree, there's a survey for you. And there's a QR code to make it easy. There's a bit.ly link, bit.ly/SOC tool survey if you want to type it in. And if you don't trust all that and want to go right to the URL, good luck typing that. That is actually the shortened version of Google. There was a much longer version that I'm not going to read. And we'll have this QR throughout. If you get angry as we go, feel free to throw something at us or dump it there. All right, so let's start with EDR. Why is EDR important? This is the tool that sits on the endpoints for all your users and all the devices that aren't even users. I see this getting auto-deployed in cloud environments. Every time something spins up with a CI/CD, it auto-attaches an EDR to every device. And EDR is your friend. You want that. You need it for detections and hopefully preventions. And then when you don't get prevented, like something gets past that EDR, you want to be able to reduce that response time by having what I like to call advanced telemetry on monitoring. You get the parent-child process. You know that this user clicked on this email that had this PDF, which then opened up this exe and kicked off this command to this PowerShell to this command to this PowerShell to whatever that flow was from the start of that infection till the end and what they did with that. So it is your friend. You want that. Hopefully it is preventing breaches. IR people will say, well, it doesn't necessarily prevent them, but it helps them say what, why, how. And the goal there is that incident response to reduce that time and give them the ability to even definitively answer which machines you should nuke and pay versus we don't know across the entire organization. And if you are a brand new CISO and you don't know where to start and you have zero tools, which is unlikely scenario, start here. If you have nothing else to buy or implement through open source, get an EDR in your environment. So, of the top of that list, based on our opinions and surveys, and this is where you might get mad and want to grab that QR code, CrowdStrike came to the top of that list with Microsoft and SentinelOne underneath. There was a lot others below that, but there was no higher ranking of them, so we just tossed those out. On the open source side, we have Elastic Agent, and then the IR folks were heavily favoring Velociraptor, and then there was a lot of people who were in the roll your own type of camp, but a lot were doing things such as using OS query, Sysmon, and using Fleet to manage that.
They're saying names.
We are saying names. So an example of why this was useful is in the Black Hat NOC, we, previous to these iPads and iPhones that we use now for registration, there used to be laptops. And you walk up, put in your email address, and that's how you would register into Black Hat. So that's what we consider our sensitive information, my data, other attendees' data. And we get these rental laptops back then, and we deployed all of those, and we turned around and put an EDR agent on all of them. And it didn't immediately flag any detection, but one of our analysts reviewing that was like, hey, something sus on that. Reviewing it further, yeah, no, they're compromised. And not one laptop, all the laptops. Ask me afterwards. Oh, what EDR on that one? We'll ask later. I don't know.
We don't like it anymore, so we're not going to name it.
It doesn't there anymore, so opinions on that one. Anyway, it did flag it through an analyst, and what it turned out was the golden image of the rental company who was turning out these laptops and handing them out for AV, handing them out for registration. Their golden image was compromised. And so we found it. We got them to fix it. They had to go rebuild an image. We validated that, got it out before anybody ever registered. But just think about all the conferences, all the people before that who were using those rental laptops, a lot of them unfortunately logging in with their own credentials to pull up their PowerPoints or Microsoft OneDrives or whatever else. Yeah, full compromised laptops. And then I had one other story on EDR, which was that cloud environment that was spinning up every device that was getting kicked out in AWS. There was a detection for the Linux cups vulnerability. It's like, hey, Linux cups, and that one was pretty sketch, and it's pretty serious. And it got everybody escalated because it was literally the most critical thing you could get in that organization. The CI/CD server, which had access to the database and everything that it spun up. Under investigation, and too long a time, but it was proven out through EDR that it indeed did have cups on it, but it came because Chrome was installed on a Ubuntu server, and Chrome brings Snap with it, and Snap auto-installed cups, and it put that script there, but it was benign and not executed. If that wasn't there, we didn't have EDR, we would never have known. That would have been from a single late night to like rebuild this entire infrastructure and send out notifications and get lawyers involved. So EDR, start there.
Start with EDR.
So you now have all this EDR logs, and you're like, cool, I can answer these questions, but you want to go and look back in time, say 3 months. Well, depending on your EDR vendor and what you're paying for, you might not have those logs anymore. You need to either pay to extend them, or you need to send them somewhere. So this is a SIM, not SIEM, a SIM, or a data lake. You kind of have your options. SIM typically gets a name because of the event management side, but data lake is somewhere else that you can just send your logs to. And some of those are building things on top of it as analytics and then some are using like business intelligence or other things on top of a data lake to do some of those same functions. Regardless, central logs, you put all your logs into a single place. The goal of that is correlation. You want to be able to not just take your EDR, but take your other tools, your switches, your routers, your firewalls, VPC flow logs, whatever it is. You want all those logs, your NDR, your DNS, everything, and put them in a spot, because then you can answer those questions fast. Instead of that turning into a late night, if there had been more logs correlated in that environment, it could have been answered that question really fast with network traffic to say nobody actually made a call in or out other than this person. You want to get your logs together to correlate. You're going to create alerts off of that. Hopefully, they call them search-based alerts or other. And then it's just needed for compliance. If you do any type of compliance in any industry, first thing they're going to ask you is about logging, alerting, and reporting. That's your SIM. You need a SIM. This does enable threat hunting that allows you to go back and look at that data, not live on that host. And then there is a retention period. And retention periods are a big deal in the SIM world, because the more logs you store, typically the more it costs. Although there are some models where it is paying based off of compute instead of ingest, but then it's like, do I want to run my dashboards because they run compute or other?
And so, as he said, retention matters, right? And I'll give you an example of where one of many that we have, but I'll give you one where retention really, really mattered. And it was, so Pope and I, not only do we run the NOC together, but we used to work together as threat hunters. We were out on an engagement one time at one of the largest financial organizations in the world. Just the building that we were in for this particular engagement, when we got in there, there were over 30 different analysts sitting in a SOC, which is a fair-sized team just for one shift to be sitting there doing stuff. We walk past them, we meet with their director of security, we sit down and we're telling what we're about to do, and he goes, well, can you explain to me what kind of hunting you're gonna do? And we explain threat hunting, it's a game of outliers, we're doing this, and he's like, well, show me. So we pull up the platform we're using, and we're like, okay, so since we're looking for outliers, here's some FTP traffic here, but there's only a few sessions of it, so why don't we go ahead and dig into that? And he goes, oh, we don't use FTP.
FTP is not allowed in our environment.
And I was like, well, it's here, so we could look at it. And he was like, no, you don't understand. We don't allow it. And we're like, okay, but it's here. So this is a perfect example of something that we should take a look at, right? And so we open it up, we're looking at it, and this attacker wasn't even trying to hide. It was literally FTPing to a .ru. Like, it was not, like, the IP address on the back end was in Russia. Like, we were like, okay, like, this looks bad. And we're like, well, we can see that somebody is FTPing out a zip file. At 1 a.m. Let's find out what this is. And Pope says, I can't open it, but we can extract the file and you can open it if you want. Yeah. And he was like, all right. And he's like, all right, then you drive. Guy sits down, opens up the file, and it was like somebody punched him, and like the wind was knocked out. It was like this, like that, and then he closed it really quick, and we were like, and he was like, you didn't see that. And I was like, all right, but out of curiosity, what did I not see? Right? And he's like, that is every financial transaction and trade that we've made in the last 24 hours. And I was like, so bad then? And he was like, okay, well, can you tell me how long that's been happening? We're like, sure, let's look at the logs.
Every day, every single day at the exact same time.
Every day, same time, for 6 months, which is as long as they had logs for. So how long was that happening?
Unknown.
Who knows? So
a long time.
Retention matters.
But the firewall doesn't allow FTP, so they're good.
Yeah, they're good. FTP is not allowed. There were 30 plus analysts sitting in another room not looking for protocols they weren't allowed to use.
This is a building we had to turn in our IDs and didn't even get them back until we left. And then that guy who we were with, he left.
Yeah, he never came back.
Never came back.
Yeah, he was busy.
We were sitting in a room by ourselves like, well, I don't know what we do now. Like, he's gone. So you got to think about your retention period because you want to know what started that, how long it's been going.
Did he never come back?
Yeah, we never saw him again. What happened to him, no one knows.
Yeah, we're... All right. So this one is what I would call the most used single pane of the single pane of glasses. Everybody's selling a single pane of glass, but this is the one where most of your logs are going, so you're typically looking there. And you want to make sure you have useful logs, right? We like to log everything, but you also want to make sure the log you're logging is parsed correctly and is useful. There is an argument to be made now about push versus pull. There are some people who now are leaving the logs in their own tools with their own retention periods, and they're using something like a SOR to pull those logs. I'm not saying if that's good or bad. That's a trend that's starting. As long as your NTP is set correctly, so when a compelling event happens, you're not screwed, and as long as you don't have caching or something else weird that's going to jack up that scenario when you need it. So the vendors here, yeah, UTC only. There is no time zones. The vendor here that made the top of the list, everybody we asked, if you had unlimited budget, do whatever you want. The answer is still Splunk. Splunk's the top of that list.
Settle down.
And then every other answer is because they don't want to pay for Splunk.
It's the truth. It really is the truth. It is the best solution.
On the open source side, Elastic took top with OpenSearch next, and then most other things are some fork of those two things. On the data lake side, Snowflake made the top of that list, and then on the open source side, Delta Lake, and then Apache.
All right, so if we're talking about logs, logs are, the gold standard for security and have been and will be for decades, right? Like, logs are fantastic, but I liken, or I'll say, on the network side, or NDR, I think of this as more video surveillance for your network, right? Like what you get with logs is like Grifter badged in this morning at 8 a.m., which would never actually happen. That's an anomaly. Start threat hunting.
1 p.m.
So, yeah. But looking at your network, watching the packets actually go by, seeing what's happening in that environment, that's like video surveillance, right? It can be expensive, but it is worth it, right? We would never build a building today and say, oh, but cameras are expensive, so let's not do that. If you're not using some type of network solution in your environment, start doing that immediately. I mean, it helps with everything. Like if you see something and it's happening on the wire, it means it's happening in your environment. It doesn't matter whether you have EDR deployed in that environment or across every device that's in there, right? Asset management is hard. It's difficult to do. And if you don't know it exists, you can't install an agent on it. Or if it's something like ICS or OT or IoT, that you cannot install an agent on it in some cases, but it will generate traffic. And if it generates traffic, it exists.
An example of that is I was in another very large financial organization in the United States here and doing a threat hunt on their network traffic. And I was doing it with like a group of people, right? And so we're going over some examples and then they're looking for those examples. And one of those, I was just going over entropy and a guy's like, you mean like this? And I was like, yeah, exactly like that. That's some like base 64 weirdness. Let's just go look at it, see what it's doing. Very quickly, we realized that it was an HVAC system that was compromised, and it was compromised and being used at that moment, like traffic in or out. And the immediate response from them was, that's not ours. We don't have that, right? That's not in our systems. That's not ours. It's like not ours. To which I replied, how are we seeing network traffic of something that's not yours? And they didn't know. And it took an hour, 2 hours of them getting their NetOps team going through switches, firewalls, to go like, oh yeah, that is ours. And actually it's a building that we didn't even know existed. The security team, and it was 250 plus hosts in a building that security didn't even know existed. Come to find out, the long version of that was they did an acquisition where they bought a company. That company had the internet backhauled from this company, from this site to this site. So that's why we were seeing the network traffic. But the security team was blind to it. The EDR that was installed, they didn't even know was there and didn't have control over it. And they had no idea it was there. That's an extreme example, but every org I've ever threat hunted has always had hosts they do not know exists, or let alone an attacker who just jumps in the environment and just spins up their own host or plugs something in. You don't have EDR on that. You need something else for that telemetry.
Yeah, and again, the network doesn't lie. I know everybody says PCAP or it didn't happen, right? But this is also PCAP, so it fucking happened, right?
It's yours.
So at the top of the list here on the vendor side, we have Corelight. This is what we use in the Black Hat NOC. Yeah, shocking. Actually, wait, did you go work there after they had already come? I can't,
I was not part of any of that decision process.
All right, yeah, so I picked it. But anyway, yeah, so Corelight at the top there, it is what we use in the Black Hat NOC. If you don't want to spend money on things, right, you can go and use the open source side, Zeek and Suricata, which is Corelight. But yeah, so if you need a neck to choke and you want more features and capability and stuff like that, then go with Corelight. If not, Zeek, Suricata, how about it?
Number one lesson we get out of Black Hat is just go validate the thing you think is or isn't happening, whether that's a VPN or other. Go look for that traffic. You can go and install Zeek, Docker up, go put Suricata on a box, TCP dump it, Wireshark it, go validate something that is happening.
Can you talk about how your NDR has changed with the increase of encryption on the network?
So the question being, how has NDR changed with the increase of encryption on the network? So over time, so Black Hat, when we started monitoring probably about 10 years ago, the amount of traffic that was encrypted, what we saw at US and Europe shows was roughly 50%, and then it increased by 5% every year till it hit about 75%. To roughly 80%, and it just plateaued at that point. And then actually in recent years, it's come down. The only region that we saw a higher percentage of encrypted traffic was in Asia, where when we started taking stats on it, it was at 90%. And I had a conversation with somebody when we were out in Singapore. And they weren't from Singapore, they're from another country in the Asia region. And I said, why so much encrypted traffic? And he said, well, when you say something about your government that they don't like, they don't do anything, but when I do, I disappear. And I was like, good God, man. All right, cool. But the reality is, like, we don't do decryption at Black Hat. We can't do that. If you are running in your organization and you need a decryption solution, you need something in there that, like, if you can't see it and you're blind to it, you can gain things from obviously metadata that's in there. So there is value still in encrypted traffic, but
we do decrypt the reg network, and organizations will do like critical assets or something like that. But there's also inferences on encrypted traffic. You can still see keystrokes through SSH by inferences, right? So you can infer a lot of things. You know bytes in, you know bytes out, you know certificate information up front. There's still a lot of value. I've never thrown in a big org that didn't have at least 40% in the clear just hanging out. And then you think cloud is better. It's not. You get in cloud, it's somehow worse. People don't understand or know how to deploy in there. The moment you're past that perimeter, it's just a dumpster fire of clear text. We got 20 minutes to hit like 6 more. Okay, so SOAR, real quick. So security orchestration and automation, you could argue the orchestration and automation part of this does not belong in a SOC. That could be a separate Trent. That could be a separate group, like your operations team that's building that. But I've seen SOCs that is a part of it, and I've definitely seen some that are separate. What I'm seeing is that a lot of SOARs have this case management, right? The workflow. So wherever that is, whether it's in your SOAR, you're running it through Jira or something, you need something that has a playbook that you execute every single time in this order, the same way from analyst A to analyst B. Fish comes in, somebody clicked on it, that box is compromised. It shouldn't be a different playbook each time. And then what you want to do is build in automation steps through those playbooks, right? So when you go to this, what things can you just auto do? Versus like looking up context, understanding the DNS resolve, all the questions an analyst is going to ask, go bring them that information so they can make decisions quick instead of spending all their time looking at info blocks trying to figure out which IP is owned or not owned by an environment, right? So the goal of this is to reduce your response time, have consistency. You want to get through more. SOAR vendors will sell this as you can reduce analysts or whatever. I've never seen that. I've never seen an org who even gets through their entire ticketing in a day, but maybe they get through their criticals. Well, maybe now you can get through some of those mediums or even touch some of the lows.
What's a good reason you would use SOAR, Pope? Maybe a Black Hat.
At Black Hat, we have a hard time going in, unless you have a Mike Spicer who's going to go find you, finding somebody in a 20,000 organization who came compromised or has clear text creds or Bitcoin mining. So we use it for captive portals. If we see that through the network traffic, we use a SOAR to kick it out to a person. So when they browse, it pops up and says like, hey, your host is compromised. Is this expected? Carry on. Or come talk to us in the Black Hat knock, right? We're an organization, you would block that. We don't block that. That might be a demo. That might be somebody on stage doing a presentation on malware. But like, hey, did you know that you're infected? If so, go for it.
Yeah, I will say that's one of the things, like people will often say that like the Black Hat network is one of the most hostile networks in the world. And that is true if you looked at the traffic at face value. If you saw the types of traffic that's on the Black Hat network for any 5-minute period in your organization, it would be pull the shades, order pizza, call the lawyers, we're doing this. But the reality is that most of that bad traffic is expected bad traffic. It does make our jobs very difficult. We cannot alert on things, right? Because people are doing classes and they're firing off attacks at labs that do exist on the internet. And so we can't block anything. And so our job is, like, if you liken to what you're doing at your organization as looking for a needle in a haystack, we are looking for a needle in a needle stack. And the only way for us to do that is to spend our time in there hunting. And that means that we get hit with a lot of stuff because, again, of the scale of the show, going from when I started 20 plus years ago, from 1,500 attendees to 25,000. We used to go down and greet them personally and say, hey, your device looks like it's compromised. Now we have to send them something that pops up and goes, look, if you don't believe us, come to the NOC. And if they do, we'll show them the packets, we'll show them the logs, we'll show them everything that proves out to them, yes, you have a compromise on this host. So while it's often billed as one of the most hostile networks, honestly, I think more people leave in a better situation or better protected after they come and get on the Black Hat network than they do coming there and getting compromised, because we're looking, we're watching, we're mitigating, but we're also helping them understand, like, hey, you had a problem when you showed up. So your team didn't catch it, but our team did. And we're spoiled. We have 60 plus really, really intelligent folks in there from all different walks of life. And so, yeah, the SOAR was just our way of making sure we didn't have to run from, like, what access point is that? Who has IP address, whatever, like trying to figure out how to help people.
It legit 15, 20 minutes just to.
How often does it happen?
Multiple times per show.
Yeah, it depends, and sometimes it could be multiple times a day, multiple times a show.
A single vendor coming in and all 10 of their laptops.
One thing that happens all the time, too, that we have to deal with is that people get to Black Hat and they're like, I learned something new. Let me attack the internet, right? Like, so people do illegal shit from Black Hat all the time, and we have to go. I'll literally walk over to a class, open the door, and be like, illegal things are still illegal. And then it's like, and then it stops.
It stopped,
right?
yeah.
So.
That student left the class and never came back. The top vendor of this, Palo XOR, I still call it Demisto in my head, and then Phantom, which is Splunk's version second. On the open source side, most answers was, what is a SOAR? It's Python scripts in a trench coat, right? The nice part of a SOAR is that they have templates, they update it, they have V3 of the API, and their job is to maintain that versus your job. But Python, people just build your own scripts. It's not, a single box that guy left and it's not there. And then there's a few other ones, Shuffle, Tracecat, and I like Sork, I like the name of it.
Yeah, it is an expensive trench coat. It's like Python scripts in a Gucci trench coat, right? So, so threat intelligence platforms, right? So threat intelligence should be, and if it's not, it absolutely should be, the foundation of your entire security program, right? But there are variations in quality in threat intelligence, so there's different categories here. Having a threat intelligence platform means taking all of the ridiculous feeds that are out there, whether they are community-led ones that you pay for, the secret squirrel ones where it's like, do you want our threat intel? Come be in our club. Taking all of those things, feeding into something that allows you to centralize it, and then say, okay, what do we actually care about here, right? If we see that we have, I'll say 14 different feeds that are being fed into our threat intelligence platform, and 9 of them say that this IOC is actually bad, maybe we need to pay attention to that. If one of them does, we kind of give it a side eye, right? We have to decide what are we gonna prioritize, but at least we have some context based on like a general risk score. That doesn't mean that we should focus purely on IOCs, right? So whether it's a file name, a hash, or IP address or host name, those things are really great intel for a very short amount of time, right? They're high fidelity when an attack is going on, when it's new. But 6 months down the road, it's probably not that useful. And maybe one of those feeds just hasn't cleaned it out. And so, so pay attention to things like that. But the stuff that actually really, really matters is TTPs or tactics, techniques, and procedures, right? How are we being attacked? If you are an oil and gas company, we have the threat intelligence that tells you these are the 5 most likely groups that are going to target your type of organization. Being able to sit down at a platform that tells you these are the techniques they're going to use, this is how they're going to come at you, they're going to come at you with these tools, and these tools leave behind this type of artifact. That allows you to take your threat hunters and go, hey, I need you to focus on these places we think we're blind. Go look and see if there's any evidence of this type of attack in that area. And it also allows you to hand that type of intelligence over to your pen testers and say, or a red team and say, look, I want you to try to emulate APT whatever, because we know that they're one of the top 5 groups that are coming for us. Don't just go out and spend money and be like somebody come in and be like, pew, 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 like look how cool I am, I'm so elite. No, spend the money in the places that say, I'm in this vertical, this is who's gonna come for me. Do we have the visibility into the ways that they attack us? And having like a high quality, centralized place for all of that threat intelligence should give you the ability to do that, but not all vendors and not all feeds do. Who does? Oh, so at the top of this list, it's probably no surprise as well, recorded future. That doesn't mean the ones below there. Any of those solutions would be great, but, and then on the open source side, MISP, we settled down. Basically, the reason that we have chosen a lot of the open source solutions here, it means that the project is actively being maintained. It has a solid community behind it, and folks are in there, doing things and supporting it like as a group. For some of them are older. You'll see we put in here on bullet points too, Twitter, Blue Sky, Mastodon, whatever everybody says. Oh, we're gonna leave Twitter. I'm leaving. Yeah, go then. Stop talking about. Stop posting on Twitter about how you're leaving. And I know, Killer Grizz over here has stickers that say like Twitter does not equal CTI, but I know that when a vulnerability drops and everybody starts talking about it, I'm on Twitter looking at it and people are like, here's the IOC, right? So it's not a threat intelligence platform, but
sometimes it's a good feed.
Threat intelligence platform. How much do we rely on secret squirrel groups for what we're doing at Black Hat? So at Black Hat, the secret squirrel group that we really have is something to just think about is that you have all these different casinos that are all over the Las Vegas Strip. They're all in competition with one another, but then Hacker Summer Camp happens, so we've got B-Sides, we've got DEF CON, and we've got Black Hat all going on within a week and a half of each other, and all of those groups actually get together every morning and evening and have an intelligence briefing with each other, which we're part of the calls where we talk about what we saw, what they saw. They're very aware of what's going on in Vegas. I say this all the time. Casinos are good at security, right? The Caesars incident notwithstanding, but they are, right? In general, casinos are really good at security. Don't mess around on a casino's network. If you do, there are a lot of cameras everywhere, but they'll take you to the room where there aren't cameras and they'll figure things out with you. Yeah. All right, so sandboxes. Right, so now we've got all this traffic, we've got all this stuff coming through. Oh, I see these executables. This could potentially be malware. Well, let's find out if it is. This is something we started doing at Black Hat because we were just like, what are people sending around here? And at every show, we find new variations of malware or somebody's new exploit. It's fun, and the way that we do that is through a sandbox. It gives us the ability to chuck files in there, open them up, interact with them, and see what happens, right? We can simulate a real environment and say, what would happen if this had executed on somebody's device? Now,
oh, that's ransomware. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's for real. Oh, okay. Yeah, it allows you to again maybe learn some things, generate some of your own threat intelligence, because if something was written and packaged for you, it gives you the ability to tear that apart, find out what it is, and maybe learn something. At Black Hat, we use ThreatGrid, and we will have every executable, DLL, PDFs, Word docs, whatever that come across. If it comes across in the clear, we extract a file, we throw it into a sandbox, we open it and see what happens. At one show, and this is an example of a non-traditional, like, oh, well, that's interesting, but I was just watching the dashboard, like watching the screen, because shiny, and I'm a VP now, so I look at dashboards. I used to be cool. Shit, I used to be cool. Yeah. Damn it, don't you clap for my demise. So I'm just staring at the dashboard, drooling, and I saw the Wells Fargo logo come up on the screen, and I was like, that's weird. And then I turned to the NDR provider, and I said, hey, will you take a look at whatever other traffic is coming from that IP address? Like, what else have they done? And they were like, sure. And they went through and started digging stuff up, and they were like, they are sending an incredible amount of sensitive documents across the network in the clear. And I was like, all right, let's find out who it is. We go into the sandbox, open it up. I see the person's name. I look at registration. They're in this classroom. Cool. This was severe enough that I went down to the classroom and I said, hey, I need to speak to so-and-so. Guy comes to the back of the class and I'm like, hey, you are sending a massive amount of really sensitive data across the network. Are you aware of that? And he was like, no, I'm not. And I was like, well, you are. And he was like, no, I'm connected to a VPN. I've been in this industry for over 15 years.
I know what I'm doing.
I know what I'm doing. And I was like, cool, you have this much left on your mortgage. And he was like, oh, and I was like, all right. And he was like, no, no, no. And he goes and grabs his laptop, brings it over to me. He's pointing at the system tray. Look, green
checkbox. Green checkbox.
It's green. It's green. And I was like, all right, well, let's dig into it. Long story long. At the end, it turned out that he had misconfigured split tunneling. And so a bunch of his data was going out. I was like, why would you do this at Black Hat? And he said, well, my son is going to university in the fall, doing financial aid stuff, and I was just uploading the stuff to their server. So it turns out that then we looked into that. All of the documents that were posted to this server, there was no TLS on it, so everybody who was submitting, not just at Black Hat, but throughout wherever, submitting for financial aid for their kids, all went to this university's insecure box that we then let them know so they could fix that. Good times.
Good times. Virus Total Me at the top of this, and Cape V2, which is like a fork-supported version of Cuckoo, but also kind of cooler. If you've never played with it, play with Cape V2. It's pretty dope. UEBA, this was a thing we were debating. Should this exist in this slide deck or not? It was like this hot thing 3-6 years ago, depending on the vendor. And the user side of this has absolutely moved over to identity and other tools. The E part for entity is still very relevant, but it's typically not a separate tool anymore. These are now built into most SOC tools, so I'm leaving this here just to say, make sure your SOC tool has some sort of behavior analytics or anomalies. This can be either through your SIM, or this can be through pretty much every tool. Your NDR should have this, your SIM should have this, your identity should have this. You should be tracking and going after those behavior analytics. We do a lot of this at Black Hat. Our classrooms, what we'll do is we will profile those classrooms, right? So if we get a detection and it's like, hey, somebody's attacking this web server and it's a legit detection, we start grouping those classrooms to say how many people, so there's 100 people in the classroom, 80 of them are getting this same detection. Okay, well, it's probably fine, right? This group of people is all attacking the same server, and it's a class on attacking a server. Fine, that makes sense, right? We're not going to stop that. A lot of people will be very upset if you stop their class, but we look for those in those same classrooms. There's an outlier up here who's just doing something else, so we go look at that. Oh, they're actually attacking some payment processor doing something else. That's probably not cool, so we have to have a conversation with them that illegal, still illegal at Black Hat. So yeah, just make sure your tools have some sort of behavior analytics. There is on the vendor side, Palo Alto XIM made the top of that. On the open source side, there's an Apache Metron. It's kind of like a project that's going down, but if you want a specific UEBA, that's the top, but then the other open source SIMs have those built in.
I will say too, just gospel according to Grifter, on the behavioral analytics side, all of those things take time to set a baseline, right? Like you burn them in, whether it's a month, 3 months, whatever it is. Please send your hunters in to look for the things that are bad before you start deploying behavioral analytics. We have seen on hunts and engagements before with Pope and I, where somebody has baseline
their C2.
Yeah, they're an attacker into the environment.
It's fine.
And it can just stay there forever, right? They can persist as long as they want.
The C2's normal. Just let it go.
So identity should be simple. We shouldn't have to beat this one over the head, right? Multi-factor authentication, why does it exist? Well, okay, we want a centralized location for us to understand everybody who's in the environment, what they have access to, and whether or not they're accessing those things outside of what is, again, normal, right? Outside their normal behavior. Did somebody suddenly teleport to the other side of the world? 30 minutes after they logged in from Boston, suddenly they're logging in from Singapore. We want to look for things like that.
Grifter now has 10 devices on Android 4.
Yeah, just playing Pokemon Go with dark matter. But But yeah, so it's also valuable for other things too, though, like accountability. Again, another example at Black Hat. Sometimes we fail, and we fail hard, and we learn lessons from those, and we try to adapt. In one scenario several years ago, we had one of our partners, and they are partners. When we choose those vendors, they do not sponsor the Black Hat Knock.
You can't pay.
You can't pay to come
play.
in. We've been offered large sums of money to put other people, vendors' solutions in there, and we always are complete dicks about it. And we just say, why don't you invest that money in making your product better, and then maybe we'll choose it for a show. So one of the partners, though, they had a vulnerability that they were like, oh, we should just preemptively patch for this. We'll do whatever. They didn't talk to us about it. They did it at midnight before training started, and they didn't test when they were done. The next day, I didn't know about it. No one knew about it. We came in, and we were like, oh, that sucks. I see you. I see your stop sign, and I choose to ignore it. So the vendor did this, didn't test it, and then we had the largest outage we've ever had at Black Hat still to date, which was 90 minutes, which meant trainers were freaking out, students couldn't access labs. It really pisses me off, but it meant that in the future we had to put an identity solution into place that meant the only people who could do commits were knock leads, and we had to approve everything because the accountability was necessary for that. So at the top of the list, Duo. And then on the open source side, Authentic, again, for those same reasons, large user base, big community support, actively being worked on.
Authentic's great. I like it.
So we talked about, platforms. There are, quote unquote, platforms for open source as well. You can go out there and grab Security Onion or Malcolm. These are essentially Kali Linux for defense. So if you want to learn how to run a SOC or do whatever, you can just fire up one of these and get busy, essentially. But
yeah, if you're a student, you're new to this, go install Security Onion, play on a box, go run some traffic through it, learn how to use SIM queries. It's your friend. It's good for organizations. If you have a single site, it gets kind of hard when it starts scaling, like a lot of these things. Okay, so integrations. The goal of this is to make all your tools work together, right? There is value in having them together. A, we got to get the data together. We already covered that. B, this is a counter argument to what we were saying. There is a real scenario here where platforms might make sense. You could have 4 of your things all together, but think about the potential rip and replace effort in the future. But there is a real scenario where platforms could make a lot of sense here. The goal of this is you want to answer your questions faster. Your mean time to detection, your mean time to respond and resolution, and getting in an organization what they like to call the golden hour, where you can go from here to responding as fast as possible. And Black Hat, this is what I do. This is the part I'm over, and the only reason that we can get through as much as we can is because we use a bunch of integrations. We use Palo XIM for that, and what we do is we have all of our data together. When we get detection, we immediately look up all of our threat intelligence platforms and say, what do you guys know about this? This is before an analyst ever looks at it. Then we do internal context. What does NDR know about it? What does the switches and APs know about it? What does DNS know about it? What does the firewall know about it? We pull all that data in, and then we want it to auto-do stuff. We want it to do the boring stuff. We don't want to take down the reg stuff, and we don't want to do critical takedown like critical credit card server and environment stuff. But what we do is we do things like, is it in a classroom? Yes. Is this expected from the classroom based on what it is? Yes. Auto-close that as Black Hat positive. That's a true detection in an organization you would block, but at Black Hat, we're going to let that go. And that's a ticket. It's real. It's a real incident, but we're just going to close it and move on because I'm more concerned about people attacking people attacking the backbone, registration system. Those are the ones we want to spend our energy and time on, not in your organization like guest Wi-Fi or something else, right?
So I saw you taking pictures of things and all whatever. This is the top of each one of the solutions, whether vendor or open source. So if you want to take a picture, take it now. 5, 4, 3, 2, done. Go to hell.
All right. Real fast on other, just want to mention these are some other tools that we've used. OIP is a network visualizer. It's one of those PPU things, but it actually has usefulness. I like it. Come talk to me. We don't have time to go through the details. If you have a Mike Spicer, use him. He'll create a bunch of scripts. We do precog for QA, where we'll go and validate how things are actually happening in each room. Weather map is useful. Grafana if you're making dashboards. Observium we use for switches and throughputs. And then CyberChef if you're ever trying to decode something. Forward-looking, LLMs are coming. We are using them in things like the NOC and other. SOC upskilling is what I'm seeing is used primarily right now. That's actually working very well. Instead of a tier 1 person turning to somebody like me and asking a question saying, what about this or this? They're asking that question to an AI. Most of the time, it's pretty good. It's actually really good when it comes to open source things because they trained on that, whether they should or shouldn't. They're trained on that, and it's pretty good with a lot of open source stuff. Doesn't mean it's perfect, doesn't mean it doesn't make mistakes. Sometimes it's like just incoherent and dumb. But signature rule reading, whether that's a Yara or Suricata or other, they're super useful for that. Sometimes they can create them. That's where it starts to get a little weird. You don't necessarily need to know the query languages of SIMs. I think that's where we're headed. I see that as like it works really well or fails really bad. Like Google SecOps is like, oh, it's like really good, and then it just does it really bad the next time. But that will continue to get better, especially as we have more UDMs. It is your training buddy, and then our last is our wild-ass guesses
our
of where we're
shitty,
going.
wild-ass guesses. So for me, it's increased regulation, right? We know that compliance isn't just checking the box, isn't working. As things get more and more or get worse and these breaches become larger and more painful and up on the news more, the government is going to have to step in, not just ours, many other governments, and say we have to actually lock this down and force accountability with these organizations unless they donated to my campaign. They will also... Things will also get faster. That's what we're seeing with stuff like this, where it's behavioral analytics or LLMs or SOAR solutions, wherever it's pulling things together and allowing your analysts to focus on things that are actionable rather than the garbage stuff, right? You should be an investigator. It's what you were hired for, not a data collector. So.
And attackers are getting faster too. So these are our guesses because I told people don't buy Bitcoin above $16. It makes no sense. So I'm not always right? So you got to take this with whatever. I think we're going to start to get steered. I'm seeing startups already. We're going to start getting steered by insurance a whole lot more. I had to do a cyber policy, and it's like, which vulnerability scanner do you have? Qualys, Nessus, Rapid7, or other. You check another box if you're doing like Greenbone or OpenVAS, and it spawns 3 checkboxes of justification of how you're doing it and how you're implementing it. You check one of those 3, and it just says, good job. It doesn't care about how you implemented it. I think more and more of that's coming, and I think that's going to lead to more and more platforms. They're going to bless a platform, and if you don't check that box, your premiums might go up. I hope that's not the case, but I really think that's going to be the case. I think you're going to end up with LLM agents doing more SOAR functions and actions. You're going to give them an objective. Here's what I would like you to do. Here's your guide rails. And it's going to go forth and start to do those things and bring you the data back. And I think that's also going to happen on the BAS side, breach assessment simulation. You're going to say, I want you to go and attack these, do these payloads up to this point, stop there. These are the attacks you can or can't do based on the environment. And I think that'll actually come around, which is, okay, now that happened, go look in the logs for evidence of those things and then tell me where my gaps are or other things like that.
We don't have time for questions, but we also don't have anywhere else to be. So if you want to hang out after.
But the AV guys do. They
do. They want lunch, and they're mad.
So again, if you disagree with any of those lists, tell us. Fill out that. Let us know where it is.
Thank you.